Thank you, sir. Uh, I would like to invite SB Osmani, sir, please.
Good afternoon to everyone, my senior colleagues, invitees, and the organizers. I thank Arvind Arora for giving an opportunity to speak a few words about emerging trends in agriculture and opportunities to all in the developing countries. Of course, Rupa Vasudevan told me about this topic yesterday night. So as a result, I was unable to prepare the slides. But many of the things have been shared by my seniors. Of course, Dr. Chetty was working for Agriculture University. He was my senior and he was my boss, of course, senior vice chancellor of Davangere University is here. He shared many things about biotechnology. Uh, so far as the topic is concerned, whether you take a developed country or a developing country, it is the agriculture which become a mainstay for increasing employment and food production. So we can't make a distinction between developed and developing countries because if we take into consideration the population that a developed and developing country needs to feed, by 2050 it is estimated that the world population will be 8.9 billion. So there is an enormous amount of increase in the population, and that needs to be fed with not only food, a nutritious food. So there is a lot of responsibility lies both on the developing countries and the developed countries to produce the amount of food which is required for the population. And because of the WTO, very recently, many of the countries have signed in 1995 the WTO agreements, wherein there are several authorities of trade, and we find emerging trends across the countries, including developing countries, and to supply the required food for the world, it is most uncertain. If you look in terms of the resource scarcity, the climate change risks, and the higher energy prices, and the demand for biofuels, and the amount of technical progress that is taking place throughout the world. So if you classify the potential area which is available for production of agricultural crops, we have potential areas for production and less potential areas for production. The problems of high potential area production are different as compared to the low potential areas. In low potential areas, we have the problem of investments. People find it difficult to go for investments in agriculture because the productivity is less. On the other hand, if you think of high potential areas, the productivity enhancement is more. As a result of increase in the supply compared to the demand, there is going to be a fall in the prices. So a decline in the prices coupled with increase in productivity, in turn the total production, the farm incomes are going to be lower. So we find on one hand decline in investments in the risk areas of production, and on the other hand enhancement of productivity in terms of increasing the production, but because of supply exceeding the demand, there is going to be a fall in the prices, which in turn affect the incomes of the farmers. So these are the two problems we find, especially in developing countries. Even though we have a increase in production, which is exceeding the population, the overall world production has increased by 2%. The population is increased by 1.6%. We are happy because food production has exceeded the population. But the major contributors of growth in Asia and most of the developing countries, it is rather enhancement in productivity rather than acreage expansion, because we know the geographical area cannot be exceeded. So far as technologies and policies are concerned for agricultural growth, since the Green Revolution of 1960s, we have been increasing use of seeds, fertilizers, plant protection chemicals, irrigation, etc., coupled with high technology. This has led to increase in production. Once upon a time, India, if you take, for example, in the year of independence in 1947, hardly the food production of 51 million tons. Now we surpass our highest production of 263 million tons of production. So our highest production that we achieved thanks to the scientists in agriculture and the policy makers who supported agriculture in a big way. Then there are good number of opportunities for new agriculture through diversification. Nowadays, farmers are educated by the line departments. They know what to produce, how much to produce. They know the market dynamics. So as a result of this, they are going for diversification in production. Not only they are dependent on food, only crops which have the capacity to meet the consumption requirements. They are thinking in terms of the markets, where there is a good market for which crop. So not only they are concentrating on domestic supplies, even the international supplies. And in this context, especially in agriculture, horticulture is playing a dominant role, and it is acting as a driver for agriculture development, especially in developing countries. So most of the area which is being devoted for production of cereals, pulses, etc., being diverted to horticulture production. And horticulture is such a sector which has a lot of potential for growth in agriculture in terms of the returns. In some of the studies, it is quoted that there is going to be a tenfold increase in the incomes of the farmers because of the diversification, especially on horticulture sector. Even the livestock and aquaculture are also contributing for the development of agriculture in most of the developing countries, because you know these complementary and supplementary enterprises in terms of livestock and aquaculture have the potential to make use of the surplus labor that's available in agriculture and enhance and add to the income of the farming community. In another area is the export market. Now, as I told, you take either India or Karnataka for that matter, you find a good number of crops being exported to a number of countries over the years. If you analyze through the help of Markov-Chain analysis, you find the trends in exports, and most of the exports are going to the less developed countries as on today. About 30 to 40% of the markets are being considered by India, and hardly 10% and less is going to be to US and UK, which are most stringent in terms of the quarantine requirements. So what I mean to say is India is exporting most of the crops to various countries, but the quantum of exports going to developed countries is less than 10%. It means India needs to concentrate mainly on quality aspects like certification. It may be Europe GAP certification, organic certification, or global GAP certification. Through this certification process, we will be able to capture the most of the developed countries, wherein we will be able to earn more income compared to exporting to some of the underdeveloped countries, mainly the Gulf countries. There are some confronting challenges, uncertainties, but these things will have to be converted into opportunities. The main problem is the reduction in the available land for agriculture production, as our seniors have already covered this. Because of urbanization, we find decline in the arable land, which is being diverted to other sectors, and water scarcity because of climate change and decline in the groundwater levels are coming in the way of agriculture production. And there are adverse effects of climate change. You know, over the years, it is going to be increase in the climate temperature ranging from 2 to 3%, which has in some crops the adverse impacts. Because of heavy temperature, the crops are not going to sustain, and there are chances of failure of crops. In turn, it will affect the farmer's income. But however, there is going to be increase in the demand for food by the world population, which is going to touch about 8.9 billion by 2050, and there is enormous responsibility lies both on the developed and developing countries to feed this increased population. There are good number of opportunities for the developed and developing countries in terms of the areas of retailing and packaging, because most of the people who are very busy nowadays, they want ready to eat foods. So there is a lot of potential in terms of retailing and packaging, and there is a lot of potential for the energy opportunities, because many of us, we know that the dependence on oil and natural gas cannot be continued unabatedly. There is a need to think of alternative source of energy in terms of biofuels, feed and grain estimates, liquid fuels, etc. So we are trying to innovate these alternative source of energy, because we can't last long for dependence on these petroleum products, oil, natural gas. And another important thing which is acting as an opportunity is the convenience and health care centers, wherein we find the rapid changes in the consumer taste and preferences, and the expectations of the people have changed. Because of this change, there is a rapid change in agriculture, production, the pattern of foods, etc. And another good opportunity for agriculture sector is a direct relationship between producer and consumer, wherein the consumers are very much interested to know what they are eating. So organic products, the certified products would come in a big way to help the consumers and to satisfy these needs. And another important thing is there is a generational transformation. It means the younger people are entering into agriculture. So many examples we read in the newspapers, especially in India. The people who are into IT sector, now they are moving to agriculture. So new generations are entering agriculture as compared to the people who doesn't find or doesn't fit anywhere will come to agriculture. Now the trend has totally changed. So innovative thinkers, the highly qualified people are entering to agriculture. So agriculture is a profitable venture, which is proved beyond doubt because of the entrance of such people who left these handsome jobs and entering into agriculture. The partnerships for success now we find in agriculture sector because of less investments. Now many corporate companies are entering into agriculture to make investments. We find number of people, number of big players to enter into production activities, advertisement activities, processing, marketing, distribution. So we find the public-private partnerships, including the government and private sector, joining hands together to enhance agriculture production productivity and make it available to the people where they are and whatever the commodity they want. So we find a lot of employment opportunities in agriculture production, marketing, exports, processing, distribution, etc. So as a result of this, on one hand we say that because of mechanization in agriculture, the technological improvements in agriculture, there is unemployment. But on the other hand, if you think of post-production aspects, there is a lot of opportunity for enhancing the employment opportunities, and many programs of the state and central governments are introduced for increasing the production and productivity, in turn, the income levels of farmers. So there are a lot of schemes, including the credit available to the farmers for enhancing production. So in a nutshell, the world food supply requires close monitoring and new investments to speed the productivity growth, make production systems more sustainable, and adapt to climate change. In addition to this, there is a need to diversify the export markets because there is a lot of demand. India is a country which is endowed with all natural calamities, natural resources, and in spite of calamities, we can make the best production and make it available to many countries in the world throughout the year. So we have enormous responsibility lies both on the developing and developing countries in enhancing food production, making it available to people, and also enhance the income levels and the standard of